Well, I did some calling around and was basically told it was going to be about $200 or $250 Canadian to do an alignment on the truck. And basically I told them that they asked why I wanted the front end alignment, and I basically said I replaced all the tie rods and all the steering components. I said the only ones that I didn't do was the ball joints. I said, and I told them, I said, I don't know if they're original. I said, I don't know how good they are. I said, that's the only ones that I hadn't done. And they said, well, if you bring the truck to us for a front end alignment, it's gonna be $200 to $250. We'll do an inspection on it. And if we find anything that may need to be replaced, then we won't do the alignment and then you'll have to come back. So I basically said to myself, there's no point in me wasting their time and there's no point in wasting my time. So I'm just going to replace the ball joints and have them done. That way, if there is any issues, then it might be something more along the lines of control arm bushings, which, like you can see on that one, is kind of cracked. But if that becomes a problem, then that becomes a problem down the road. Right now, I'm just still trying to get this thing aligned properly, the work done, so that I can replace tires on it. So I went out, purchased 4 new ball joints, went with the Mevotech TTX line again. These are the front uppers, so that's the part number there for them. And I also got the front lowers. That's the part number there for them. These lowers, man, those suckers are pretty hefty in weight. The fronts, they got some weight to them, but not nearly as heavy as these lowers. These lowers are definitely got some weight to them. So I started taking things apart, and I'm going to do this in what I would consider the harder method. And you basically do your axle nut, which I already have off. You take caliper off, which I got to do next. Take your tie rod off, which I've done. And then you basically undo the nut for the upper and the lower ball joint. And then you basically remove the knuckle with the rotor and the bracket and all of that attached. Being that this is a 6-inch lift knuckle, it's going to add some substantial weight to this. So I'll have to be careful with that. But that way, it just makes this a little bit easier to do this job. If you want it to be easier, then you can take, you know, your brake rotor off, your bracket off, your rotor off, and you can go that route so that all of this external weight is gone. But I am trying to do this as quickly and as efficiently as I can. So I am going to do it that way. Nothing really to it. Just when you are getting things ready to come off, just be aware that it can be a lot of weight on there. And if you're not ready to catch it or be aware of it, you can drop it on the ground. So I'm going to get a couple more things off of this truck, and then I'm going to get the part ready to basically come out, and then I'll show you what's going on when I'm at that point. Okay. Getting ready to pull this knuckle off. You can see the ball joint is freed there, and you can see it's freed there. I had to undo the brake line off the knuckle. You can see I've got the caliper hanging there, and I just took a couple of lug nuts, pulled the rotor on. As always, be careful of your speed sensor. You don't want that to get broken in all of this, because that will be a very expensive repair if you have to. I'm not a big fan of how GM does these ones, but it is what it is. Because as you can see, it's flopping around, and it could just break those wires off on the inside, and then it's all coming off. So I'm trying to be very careful with that part. So I'm going to take the nut off that, this whole piece will come down. and then we will be ready to do the ball joints. All right, so if you are now at this point, give yourself a pat on the back because you are about halfway done this job. I would consider the majority of the hard work is done depending on the ball joints. So caliper's hanging there. Yep, caliper. There's the CV axle, and you can see the knuckle is out. I'm going to be back in here at some point because looking at the cracks in this boot, this will have to be replaced probably before next winter. So that'll be coming up on the job or on the task list, but it's all right for now. This again doesn't look like it's been changed as much as this one, so good thing I'm in here. They're loose. I mean, they got a little bit of play in them, so I can only imagine how much that wood is for the top. Bottom one is pretty loose too. It's not like crazy loose, but it's loose. So next step for this is getting out the ball joint press. So it's basically this guy here, just a oversized C-clamp with a bunch of pipes and stuff like this to basically rip those guys out. Not really going to go too in depth on that. There's a lot of videos out there about this being done. I'm just kind of going through it as a quick step because I am putting these Mevotechs in, and basically any videos that I found or tried to find about these Mevotechs didn't really exist too much, so it's just a way for me to put some video footage of these parts being put in and being used. So I'm going to get at these parts. One nice thing about my truck, because it has the lift on it, I'm able to use the ball joint press to take the bottom or the top out fairly easy. On a non-lifted truck, the steps change because you usually will have to pull the top ball joint out to get enough room in there so that when you do the bottom, the handle can either stick up through the top ball joint hole, or the whole arm can lift up high enough to get it in there. But because I've got plenty of room, I should have no problems. So I'm going to start with the bottom one. Once I have the bottom one out, then we're going to start on the top one. So that's the next thing on the job. And once I have those out, then I will show you the comparison between the old versus the new. If there is something that I have learned about working on this truck, key words that should never come out of my mouth is, that will be easy. So I got the ball joint out, as you can see. I do need to do some cleanup in here. I thought I had a flap disc, a round one that you can use to do this, but I don't. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get this all cleaned up. I do have a die grinder, which I probably could just kind of go around the inside gently, but we'll see. A few things happened. I now need some ball joint press parts because this one is completely foobarred. The issue is that when GM makes these control arms, you obviously need a cup that goes around that whole piece so that it can basically drop out. And this cup is the perfect size. The problem though is that when you put the cup under the ball joint, you can see that it doesn't have any means to catch on the outside. So it basically just, if you use the press wrong, it twists it up like this and doesn't do anything. What I found was putting the press in from this side caused that to happen, but when I put the press in from the back side, because of the natural angle of this, I think the press had a better chance of keeping everything more in line and doing a better job at pressing. But as you can now see, my press has seen much better days and is just completely foobarred. So now I need to buy a new ball joint press as well. I'm hoping, even with the way that it is right now, all warped and crap like that, that I'll be able to at least get the lower ones in, and I'm hoping to try and get the upper one done today, but at the least, it'll be the bottom, and then I have to put this all back together. I need the truck on the road in the next couple of days, so yeah. What else can I say? When I had the press in the back, I had my big 1/2 inch impact, and what I would do is I would impact it down to you basically can see the threads not turning anymore, apply a little bit of heat on it, and then I would just take my 5-pound sledge and then just kind of whack here and whack here and then whack a little bit here. And if I still didn't get any movement, then I would use my air hammer with just the blunt end and do the same thing, just vibrate it here and vibrate it here. And then I would find that I'd be able to just torque down on the press just a little bit more. You would see the threads spin down. When it stopped, repeat. Did apply a little bit of heat on it. So heat, whack, whack, whack. Try, if it didn't move, air hammer around the outside. If it moved, then I'd move it again until it stopped and repeat the process. It came out. So ball joint press will have to be replaced. I'm going to have that come in, and then I'll be able to do the other ones on this weekend coming up, because it is a long weekend for me. So that'll happen. But for now, I got to find a way to clean up the inside bore of that before I put the new one in, and then we'll go from there and see what happens. Slightly delayed just because of the destruction of my tools. So I'm going to turn the music on and I'm going to get cranking, and hopefully in the next hour or so I should have this side done, back together. This is the new lower ball joint. You can see side by side that they are a little bit different. This flange is a little bit thicker than this one. This is a little bit longer than this one. So I'm not sure how that'll play out, but I guess we'll see. So time for music, time for working. Well, with the magic of just about every possible combination of cups, ball joints are in. There's the lower, there's the upper. So going to put grease into them now, and then it's going to be getting the knuckle back on, and then this side will be done. As I said in a previous clip, I plan and will show maybe a little bit more in depth of how I got these things out. Going in, not a problem. They just sucked right up without any issues. So that was real easy. But taking them out was the hard part. So I think I'll show a little bit about that when I do the driver's side. One thing to note, upper control arms. When you put the ball joint in, apparently they have a little dot on it. They give, I don't know where it went. There's a little piece of paper that's attached to it that says mark this dot to the drilled one on the arm, but there's no arm drill here. From what I can tell, the general consensus is make sure that's pointed towards the tire. If I could find a little sticker. So this is the sticker here. Well, just a label. It says on this side, front of vehicle, so you'd be basically looking at it this way, like that, because that's the front. So there's the front, and then there's the dot, and it just says basically drilled towards mark. But if you look, that's basically the outside of the control arm. So it just says the ball joint must be installed using the correct orientation. Verify index marking before pressing into control arm. Index mark must be perpendicular to the wheel. Well, I looked as much as I could on here and I couldn't see a mark, and a lot of people said put that outwards. So that's what I did. So that's the uppers, and the lowers done on the passenger side. Gonna finish up, head into the house. Probably wait till the weekend to do the driver's side, so it'll be a few days. But yeah, progress. That's what I wanted tonight. Well, like I said, I'm going to show you guys what I do to get the lower ball joint out, because I had such a tough time on the passenger side. You're going to see people do multiple and various things of getting this out, anywhere from just taking a big hammer and just whacking the living crap out of this. I don't like doing that because I don't want to damage any of this. I don't like whacking hard on either side of this because I do not want to deform this opening. So I do it strictly using a ball joint press. I picked up this Astro Pneumatic Goliath XL. It's worked very well. My old press died. I bent the living crap out of this, but I mean, that one went through a lot of ball joints. I use a little bit of heat just to warm up this area, just to loosen this up. And then I've got two versions of cups for the press. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you which ones I use for this, because GM ball joints, especially the lower on these trucks, are a little bit different. And if you try using a standard cup, it does not work. So you got to use a certain setup for this. So put you on a tripod and I'm going to show you how I do all of this. All right, well, I thought I had a cup that fits there, but I don't. So what I've done, 32 millimeter deep impact socket, that fits over top of that. Then I've got this cup, which is a little bit longer, doesn't go through. It's got the notch, which is for the clamp to go in. That fits over the 32 just fine. Then we have our clamp. And yes, doing this will test your patience, which is why you probably see a lot of guys who get annoyed and just start whacking this with hammers and everything else that they've got, because they don't want to spend the small amount of time to get everything set up to do the job right. So now the key to this is not to put an ungodly amount of torque on this, because you're either going to break or bend your press, or you're going to bend and break your cups. And you want this to be perfectly set. And from what I can tell right now, we're not quite set in place, because looking at it, on the bottom side over here, the cup is still not quite sitting the way that I would like it to. So I'm gonna get this set up and then I'll show you guys how it'll look and then what I'll do. Well, I don't know why but this cup here, for some reason, after playing around with it, seems to seat better in there. I still am not 100% sure that it's going to work, but we're going to make it work. So the 32 mil socket plus that cup and this one plus the plate, and it's all sitting down, and that's the ball joint you can hear. So basically what we're doing now is I got a breaker bar and I'm just putting some pressure on it until it just can't go no more. And then I take a little bit of heat. And then we just add a little bit more pressure. And if you can feel, you'll feel it hit a point where you're just not going any further. And when it gets to that point, that's where you gotta start using external tools. So I'm gonna use my air hammer. And then I take that and I just go around the edge here. And I add a little bit more pressure until I can't feel it anymore. Throw a little more heat on it. Remember, we're not trying to make this scalding red hot. We're just trying to make it hot enough that the metal just kind of relaxes, which will allow the ball joint to go through a little better. So we add a little more pressure. I can't get it to move any further. So we use my air impact again, or my air hammer. We try turning it, so we got a little bit more movement, and then it stops. A little bit more. We try turning it more. Still pretty stuck, so we don't want to do too much more. Heat. We'll try cranking it. Still pretty snug. Throw a little more pressure on. A little more turns. And we just keep repeating this cycle. We just keep doing this, and eventually this ball joint will pop. This may take anywhere between 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or more. But this is what you basically got to do this, and eventually it'll just pop out, and then you're not whacking the crap out of the ball joint, you're not banging the crap out of your control arm, you're just constant pressure down onto the ball joint, and eventually it'll just pop. So I'm going to work on this for a little bit longer, and once I get it to a point where I can basically push it out, I'll show you guys. All right, 2 moments later. It's getting ready to pop out. So it'll be kind of hard to tell, but if you look, where are we? Right there. You can see that gap. that means that this is now moving. And if you look at my ratchet and we watch the joint, you can see it coming out. So I know that in my case, I have a few specialty tools. Not everyone's going to have an air compressor for an air hammer. You know, not everyone's going to have, you know, MAP gas to apply a little bit of heat to that. I just bought this nice, it's technically a breaker bar, but because it ratchets, I just call it a very long ratchet. But you could do technically all of this without like the air hammer, but you would definitely want the gas, and you definitely want that, and you definitely want a good press. If you didn't have an air hammer, I mean, you could just use a ball peen and just do more of a gentle taps around here. Don't be so hard on it, and you'll probably be able to break it free. But yeah, this one is now coming out. So the reverse will be just installing it from the bottom up. Upper ball joint, never had a problem doing these ones. These ones seem to come out fairly simple, especially the original ones. They seem to not get as stuck because they're not in there as deep as these ones, because these ones, because it presses up, it gets a whole bunch of all the crud and stuff down inside the cup area, so it really seizes in there. So just figured I'd show you what I do to set this up, to do this job, to pull the lower, instead of taking a 15-pound sledgehammer, just smashing the crap out of it. This, I think, basically, of all setting up everything and getting it actually ready to be pressed out, is the most time. Getting it to the point where I can actually press it out, and to a point where it's coming free, less than 5 minutes. It's not that hard of a job. You see people swearing and cursing, taking them out, putting them on a shop press like I've got there. But the problem is that on a 4x4, you've also got the torsion bars down there to deal with, and for a lot of people, those will be eternally stuck. So you can try pulling this lower control arm to put that into a shop press, but have fun trying to get the torsion bars out. So ball joint press works fine, gets it out. So just take some of that into consideration, and the next time you're doing this, maybe it'll work for you. So I'm going to finish up doing this side, and that will be it for the ball joints. And then from there, who knows what's next? Probably an alignment, and we'll see how bad that is. So thanks for watching this one, and hopefully, or maybe learn not to have to pound on your lower control arm with a 10-pound sledge. So thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.